So today we're going to take a look at a product that I've been interested in looking at for quite a while, which is the TS80 Smart Soldering Iron, available from Banggood.com. Now, full disclosure before I start the video, this product was sent to me free of charge from Banggood.com. However, they've not told me anything to say. They won't be seeing this video before it goes live, so I'll be giving my honest opinion on it, and I'm not receiving any commission from any sales brought from people buying this product based on this video. So I will be giving my honest opinion of this product, and it's something that I've been wanting to look at for a really long time since I saw it coming out, really. So the TS80 is a follow-up to the very popular TS100 soldering iron, and it's a sort of baby brother of it almost. While the TS100 is a 65 watt iron, the TS80 is much lower power at only 18 watts. However, it's a much smaller device and it's powered over USB-C, so unlike the TS100 that requires either a LiPo pack to power it or a big laptop power supply or something like that, this can be powered from a USB-C power supply or power bank as long as it supports Quick Charge 3. So it definitely looks like a very interesting product. Historically for soldering, I've always used the 60 watt soldering station, which is a really good digital soldering station that's really powerful, really temperature controlled. It's just a really good station. However, for a lot of the stuff I do, it's a bit bulky. You know, you have to be able to have this sitting on a table, and then you can only really solder something at like the length of this cable away from the base. So if you're trying to solder something in an awkward location, it's a bit of a pain. And if I just want to do a really minor bit of work, it's a real pain having to get this whole thing out of box, set it all up, connect it all up and start using it, and then put it, wait for it to cool down and then pack it away again. It's a bit inconvenient. A good example was like a couple of weeks ago, one of my studio lights, one of the wires came off inside and it stopped working. So I just had to quickly solder it back on. But because this was my only soldering iron, I had to get this whole thing out, connect it all up and plug it all in. It was a bit of a faff. The other option is you've got just the basic soldering irons, just the ones you plug into the mains, they heat up to a temperature that you hope's right and then you use it. And they work okay as well, but they're not that controllable. So what I'm hoping is that the TS80 will fill that gap for me, where it can be a soldering iron that's maybe not as powerful as this and can't do, really good rapid production soldering, but for quick bits of small work, or if I want to do something really precise, where I don't want to have to set this whole station up, this should be really useful. And being able to power it over a power bank as well, not just off the mains, could be really useful if you need to repair something out in the field or where you're not near a main supply. So it definitely looks like a pretty cool bit of kit to take a look at. So the TS80 is available in two different kits from Banggood. The first one, which is the more basic kit, at the time of filming costs £56.60, and all that includes is just the iron itself and a conical tip. What I have here is what they call the More kit. It's literally just called More. And this comes with a fair bit more hardware. So this costs £62.81, which is only about £8 more, so it's definitely worth going for this instead, because you get a chisel tip instead of a conical tip, which I personally prefer. You also get the power brick, a USB Type-C cable, a ground wire, which we'll take a look at later, as well as a hex key, which I think is for using with that ground wire. So it comes with a fair bit more stuff, especially when it comes with that chisel tip, which is really useful. So that's what you get in the kit there. Now, one unfortunate thing with this, just because it's such a new product, is replacement tips aren't available yet. So when you buy it, you can either get it with a conical tip or the chisel tip, depending on what kit you go for, but you can't then buy the replacement tips. On Banggood, they have put a thing out saying they are releasing the tips, so they are coming out. They're just not widely available yet because it's such a new product. So hopefully they'll come out soon. So without any further ado, let's take a look inside and see what we get. So here we have the packaging. So you can see we see the iron there, which actually looks quite compact, and then the single tip that it includes here. Down here is the branding, so it's a TS80 Smart Soldering Iron, and that's the logo of the company, which is called Miniware. They seem to make the TS80, the TS100, and lots of those little LCD oscilloscopes, these little neat things. So they seem to make a lot of that sort of stuff, but their most popular products definitely seem to be the TS80 and the TS100. On the side are some of the features. So the temperature range is 100 degrees to 400 degrees. We'll interested to see how well that actually works. Input voltage 9 volts, because even though this is USB, it's Quick Charge 3, so it can go up to 9 volts. 18 watt power output, which isn't huge, but for basic soldering that's fine. We'll see how it handles high thermal mass components, but it should definitely do most basic soldering. On the back is just the contents of the kit. This side is Smart Control, don't know what that means. Sleep mode, which means when you put it down, it'll switch itself off or turn the temperature down a bit. It's got an accelerometer, so it can work out when you've picked it up and turn itself back on again. That can preserve the life of the tip. And Alert mode, 400 degrees, which I guess means if it overheats or something, it maybe flags that up. I'm not 100% sure on that. But now let's take a look inside. So, don't know how we get into this. Should probably looked at this before I tried to film, but oh, there we go. The top comes open, and we'll see what we get. So I've not actually opened this before, So what we'll do is we'll do an unboxing, take a look at what we get. I'll then go away and try it out and see how I get on with it. Come back and do some demos showing it actually being used, and then I'll give my impressions. So now here we are inside the box, so that's the iron and tip itself, so we'll take a look at that later, save the excitement until later. And here we get a little box of accessories. So that there is some simple instructions, which actually doesn't look like too bad English, which is quite nice. And then we've got this little box of accessories, so let's see what we get with it. So we get this, which is the grounding strap. So I'm not 100% sure how this works. I think this attaches onto the iron itself, and the tip will then be electrically connected through to this ground pin, or this crocodile clip, so you can sort of ground it to something at the same potential as what you're working on. We'll take a look at that later. Next we get the USB-C cable, which actually feels really pretty nice. So it's like a silicon cable, so I'm presuming it's heat proof. We'll take a look at that later and hopefully not like melt it. But what's really nice is how, it's hard to express on camera, but it's how like light and floppy it is. My concern with this would be if you're using like a normal USB-C cable that can be quite stiff, that when you're trying to solder, the cable could potentially drag or, you know, knock the soldering iron out of position. Whereas this is such a flexible cable, it's the most flexible cable USB cable I've ever felt. It's not going to get in the way when you're soldering, which is really good. So it's just a USB-A connector on that end and USB-C on the other end. Slightly disappointingly, it is a cheaper USB-C connector. You can see it's got a little join in it there, whereas like a proper good quality USB-C connector is extruded and doesn't have a little join in it. But I'm sure it'll be fine. And definitely that cable is so flexible, that's really good. And it'll be interesting to see if that is actually heat proof, which I presume it is, because it feels a lot like the silicon cable on my main soldering station. In fact, it's a lot more flexible than that. A couple more accessories in the box. So we get a Allen key, which again I presume is for connecting that grounding strap. Yep, it will connect up to there, so that'll be connecting the ground strap to it. And finally, we get the power brick. So here's the power brick it includes. And it's fairly light, but it should hopefully be okay. And obviously it's Quick Charge 3 compatible, so you can easily use any other Quick Charge 3 power supply. You don't have to use the included one. So it's got different voltages and current ratings on the back because it's Quick Charge 3, so it can change voltage and current rating depending on the device it's connected. But we can see here that it does, I think, 3.6 volts to 6.5 volts at 3 amps, 6.5 to 9 volts at 2 amps, and 9 volts to 12 volts at 1.5 amp. So that's perfectly within the rating of the TS80 soldering iron. So as you can probably tell, this is a US plug. So if you're in the US or Canada or any country that uses that style of socket, you'll be able to use this adapter. But in the UK or Europe, you'll either have to find a different power adapter that's Quick Charge 3 compatible that plugs directly into your sockets, or you can use an adapter to connect this into a socket in your country. Now this is going to be a very brief moaning moment of me bringing up something that I keep trying to bring up because it's a major issue at the moment. Is when people buy things from China, quite often they come with these adapters. Now this actually didn't come with one, surprisingly. I was expecting it to, but quite often it's really common, so I wouldn't be surprised if people buying the TS80 would get adapters like these shipped with them. These are what Big Clive on YouTube calls death adapters, and they're very, they're lethal. You don't want to use these, especially if you're in the UK. Never use one of these adapters if it comes with a product you've bought from China or a product you've bought from anywhere. The pins sort of fit, but they don't really fit in that securely. It doesn't make a good electrical connection. They're never grounded if you have a grounded device. The contacts inside are tiny. There's pretty high resistance on the contacts. It's too small, so when you're pulling it out of a socket, your fingers can go around and touch the live pins. The pins aren't the right length, and most importantly for the UK, there's no fuse in it. So if there's a short circuit occurred in the charger or something, there's absolutely no protection apart from the breaker in your consumer unit, and by that point it's probably caught fire. So while this didn't come with one, it's worth mentioning that if you do buy something from China, never use these cheap adapters. Literally, if you've got one, throw it away or keep it as a prop for videos like I do. So what I'll be using with mine is a much higher quality adapter. So this is a decent one made by Masterplug, so it's a proper branded one. And you can tell it's a much safer adapter because it's much larger, it's got a fuse in it, the pins are all the correct length and solid, it's nice and grippy, and it's got different holes for each country, so it's not like you're trying to jam it into a one-size-fits-all contact. It properly fits in there and it's really secure. And there's no huge holes left there where you could jam like a plug in the wrong way or anything. So yeah, this is the sort of adapter you want to use. Well, obviously that's a bit of an aside, but it was just I felt it worth mentioning that before people try and use those dangerous things if they turn up with their soldering irons. But obviously the ideal option with this is to buy a proper Quick Charge 3 power brick that fits a socket in your country. Unfortunately, I just don't happen to have one because while my phone is fast charging, it's Huawei's supercharged proprietary standard, it's not quick charge. So I would definitely recommend, if you're using this heavily, buy a proper power brick that fits your country. So now let's try and fire this thing up for the first time. So we've got the iron here, which is the main body of it, which comes out like that. Oh, it's actually metal. So actually, yeah, the whole thing is metal construction, which feels really nice. Like it's, I mean, it wasn't, I suppose metal makes sense. I was almost expecting it to be plastic, but yeah, it's actually really nice metal. And that like unscrews there. It feels like really nice machining metal. Definitely feels really well made, which is pretty good. Yeah, it feels really nice. So that's the main body of the iron there, and then we've got the tip, which we'll try and get out. Which again feels really nice. Just feels like a really solid piece of metal. Really, it feels really good. So in theory, I think you just plug the tip into the front. So I don't know. I think that just plugs in. Yep. So that just plugs in. I don't really know why this bit unscrews because the tip just pulls in and disconnects without that, so you screw that in and then that just pushes in and pulls out, so I don't really know why that needs to come off. I don't know if that's just a machining thing because we made it into a grip, or if it's possibly different types of tips may require that to come off, not sure. But yep, all you need to do is take the tip, push it in, and that's it in. And it feels really solid, so I really like that. The other thing to mention with this is that it's a direct heat soldering iron. So unlike my more traditional soldering station, which is this, where what you have is you've got an element inside here, which is a bit grotty, but that's the element, and then the tip itself is here, and the tip goes over the element, and then the heat's transferred through to the tip. With a direct heat iron like this, the element and the tip are all in the one piece, so the element's directly down here. Now that means you get better thermal transfer from the element to the tip because it's one piece, it's not transferring through air or just based on contact. So you should in theory get much better thermal performance. And it means that every time you replace the tip, you're also getting a new element. So it's not like your element could burn out separately from your tip. When your tip becomes a bit grotty and you want to replace it, you're also getting a brand new element at the same time. So it's definitely a pretty nice way of doing it. This is what a lot of the higher end soldering stations are doing, so it's really good to see it on a budget device like this. So yep, tip goes in there, and they're ready to go. So we can peel the plastic off the screen there. And you can see here we've got this little OLED screen, and then two buttons, not three buttons yet, so there's one there, and one in the middle. So I'm guessing that's like up, down, select or something like that. And on the end there you've got the USB-C connector. Okay, so now let's power it up and see if it works. So I've got the power supply plugged in here. Unfortunately I don't have a stand for it, and it doesn't really fit in this stand for my normal soldering station because it sort of just sits like that against the top here, which is metal, so I don't really want that. It'd be nice if it included a stand because the TS100 did seem to come with a stand. It was quite small, looked quite neat. So it's a bit annoying it doesn't come with one, but I can probably figure something out or maybe buy a stand aftermarket. So it's not too bad, but it would have been really nice if it came with a stand. For now I'll just use this metal disc just to keep it off the table so I don't burn my table. So there's the iron there, and all we need to do is plug it in. So we've got the USB cable, so we'll plug one end into the power brick, then the other end into the TS80 and see what happens. So mini, version 106, and it's heating. Okay, so it's on. It's getting hot. It's not really heating up. It's saying setting as well. What? Oh, okay. I wonder if this is a menu because it's saying like heating, setting, and then showing both symbols. So is that like I need to then press the left button maybe to put it in heating mode? Oh, there we go. Yep, that's now heating up. Okay, so yep, that's heating up. Shows the voltage there, 8.98 volts. I think that's like showing a tip, and then the arrows showing the temperature's increasing. Yep, and it's going up. Yep, I can feel heat coming off that now. Yep, that's definitely getting hot. You can smell it as well. Yep, you definitely smell it heating up. And now it's sitting on like 300 degrees. So yep, that seems to work. So now let's see if this can melt solder. So got some regular leaded solder here, see if this works. Yep, there you go. Probably can't see it on camera because it's not really going to work. Yep, that is definitely melting solder. Seems to work. Yeah, that seems to melt that completely fine. Now that's at 300 degrees, obviously you could probably turn it down a lot more, but yep, that is working. So now how do we change temperature on this? So if I want to say decrease temperature, do you maybe hold it? Okay, so you hold it down, it goes into temperature interface, and then you can either click it up or down individually, or it actually accelerates quite quickly, which is good. So say put it down to 230 degrees, and then you press the middle button to time it out. No. So okay, so I don't actually think there is a middle button. When you press there, it just either hits one or either up or down. Okay, so it times out. So yeah, I think that there's no middle button, and then what you do is you hold one down to go into the temperature setting interface, set the temperature you want, and then wait, and then it'll time out and go back to the normal interface, and then heat up. Okay, so that makes sense. So now that should hopefully still, well, that's soldered. Yep, that's definitely working. Cool. So that definitely works. Obviously I need to play with it a lot more and actually try and solder with it before I can give it any sort of real opinion on it. So what I'll do is I'll go off camera and play about with it. I'll check the current draw from it, I'll try soldering different things, try different temperatures, I'll explore the settings menu, and then I'll come back with my impressions once I've got a sort of good feel for the device. But so far it seems pretty good. Naturally, like how it feels in the hand is just, it does feel like it just fits really nicely in the hand. And as I suspected before, that cable is just so loose, it barely feels like it's there. You're not being dragged down by the cable at all. So yeah, it actually feels like a pretty good device. So obviously I've got no real idea of how good it is so far, so what I'll do is I'll go away and play with it and come back. Okay, so I'm now back from trying the iron out a fair bit, and I'm really impressed with this thing. It's way better than I expected it to be. I expected it to be good, but it just performs brilliantly. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at some soldering tests later, but what we'll do now quickly is we'll take a look at the controls, because I've now finally figured out how to use it, because it's not the most intuitive thing in the world. So if we plug it in, it'll start up as before. You get the logo, version 1.06, and we're at the menu. At the time of filming, that's the latest firmware version. However, future firmware versions may come out and change this slightly, but this is how it works currently. So now the first thing you'll notice about this is the screen, which is really bright. It's a nice OLED screen, which means it's really easy to see under bright lighting. So in here I've got two bright studio lights and quite bright lights in the room, yet it's still completely readable. This is quite important because when you're soldering you are quite often doing it under bright lights, so this is really nice. One very minor niggle is that this is quite reflective, so it's quite possible to like sort of flash bright light in your eye when I was using it, but I mean it's not a huge deal. So we're now at the sort of main screen, so we'll take a look at all the menu systems, see how it all works and see how the controls work. So it's saying setting or heating. So to heat it up and use it as a soldering iron, you press the leftmost button here, and that'll start heating. If you hold that down, it shows a thing about the heating element resistance. It gives you a readout of that, which was very confusing because I kept forgetting that you had to press it, not hold it. And I thought it was broken because I was holding it and it kept saying the heating element resistance. So you click it once to go into the heating menu and heat the iron up. So as you can see, it's now heated up to 300 degrees and it's sort of settling down and it's now finally settled. And it actually heats up really quickly. So now we're in the heating menu, you can see we're set to a temperature. So what we can do from here is change the temperature by pressing the leftmost button here. You hold that down and it pulls up the temperature setting menu. From here you can then increase the temperature, so we put it up to like 350. And then you just have to wait for it to time out. You can't really exit this, but once it times out, you'll see the temperature starts increasing. Then once it hits 350, it'll sort of settle down a bit. And this little like animation on the right here seems to indicate this current state of the temperature. So if it's got like little lines just going out horizontally from it, that's indicating it's just maintaining the current temperature. And if it's showing arrows, that's indicating it like heating up or cooling down. So we're now at 350 degrees. It also gives a readout of the voltage at the top right, which is quite nice to have. So now if you want to turn the temperature down, again you just go into the setting menu there, decrease the temperature to level. This is also sort of accelerate, so you can sort of hold it to change it quickly. So we set it to say 250, wait for it to time out again, and you'll see it'll start showing this thing saying it's cooling down from this current temperature to 250. So you sort of see it's cooling down there, so it's quite a nice animation, it's quite a nice UI to look at as well. And it's fairly intuitive to use, it's not too bad once you figure it out. So that's us now back at 250 degrees. Now, if you want to go exit and actually power it down, you just need to sort of hold down the top button here, and that'll take you out to the main menu. A couple of times, for some bizarre reason, when I've done that, it's popped up saying low voltage. I don't know why, because it seems to be absolutely fine under normal use. Even if you put it out to 400 degrees, it still works absolutely fine. But just occasionally telling it to exit to the menu by holding this button down would bring up a low voltage warning. I don't know why, it doesn't seem to affect the iron too much. I'm guessing it's just like a little firmware bug that might get resolved in the future. But we're now back at the main menu, and that means the iron will be switched off and start cooling down again. Another nice feature of this is the sleep timer. So I've left the iron sitting idle for a while, and as you can see it's now decided to start cooling itself down to 200 degrees. By default I think this timeout set to about 2 minutes, but you can easily change that, and you can also change the temperature as it decreases to. The benefit of this is it preserves the tip life, so if you leave the iron just sitting idle, it'll cool itself down so it's not constantly running the tip at a high temperature. So now you can see because I've laid it down, it's now timed out, cooled down, it's now sitting at 200 degrees, whereas it was previously set to 300. However, the great thing with this is it has a built-in accelerometer. So all I need to do to wake the iron up is to pick it up again. And if I pick it up like that, you can see straight away it starts heating right back up again. And because it heats up quickly, you barely even notice this. So that's a really nice feature, that it'll just cool itself down to a safe temperature and then heat itself right back up again when you pick it up. So now we're back at the main menu, we can take a look at the settings. So to do that, you press the right hand button there, and that pulls up the settings interface. You can then use these buttons to then flick through all the settings you can change. So we can flick through there like that, and if we say what we want to change the working temperature, you pull that up there, and then you hold down the left hand button until it shows up these little arrows, and now you're in there, you can then just change the values with the up and down buttons, and then you just need to wait for that to time out again to set that setting. Like that. It's got quite a lot of neat settings, so you can change the working temperature there, standby temperature, which is the temperature it goes to when it sleeps, sleep time, which is how long it waits before it goes into sleep mode, power. Now this is a weird one. So you can see it's set to 18, which indicates 18 watts. But if you go into this, you can actually increase it all the way up to 24. However, Quick Charge 3 can only actually do 18 watts, so I don't know quite what they're doing here. I did a bit of testing with this by setting it to each of these values and placing the iron on a wet sponge to really cool it down to make it pull the most current it could. And when it was set to 18 here, it pulled 1.8 amps at 9 volts, which is just over 16 watts. When I set it to 24, it pulled 2.1 amps at 9 volts, which is just over 18 watts. So it was a bit weird, it was sort of going a little bit beyond the Quick Charge 3 standard. Now when I'm using it, I'm just going to leave it set to 18 because that's a factory setting, and I don't want to risk overdriving something and burning something out. But that is an interesting setting that you can potentially increase the power level, but I'm just going to leave it on 18 watts for now. Next up you've got temperature step, which is the increments that are used when you're increasing and decreasing the temperature. So that's set to 10, so temperature goes up in tens, but you can change that, although 10's fine. Off voltage, I don't quite know what this is. I'm guessing it's something to do with, like, if you overvolt it or something, it'll power off, like it's a safety thing. Temperature, this is where you can change it between Celsius and Fahrenheit, but obviously I'm in the UK, so Celsius. Again, wait for that to time out. And then the final one you get is the hand. So this is quite nice. So because I'm holding it in my right hand, you want to set it to right hand so the display's up that way. But if I was holding it in my left hand, you'd see the screen would go the wrong way up. So what you can do here is you can just go into that setting there and flip the screen the other way. So if you're left-handed, you can flip that round. So that's quite nice. They have at least thought of that. There's then this readout of the voltage and temperature, and then you can just restore the default settings. So you can do that, hold left button down, and that'll restore the default settings. Now for all my testing here, I have had it on default settings, just for a bit of context. In addition to the settings menu, you can also configure this thing over USB. So for that, all you need to do is plug it in with a USB cable into a computer, and it'll show up as an external drive. It's an 8KB FAT12 drive, but in there there's a config file. All you need to do is open that up in a text editor, and you can change all the values in there. So it's not particularly easier than just using the menu on the device, but it's nice to have that option as well. So now let's actually try soldering with this thing. So in order to do that, I just picked up a cheap little electronics kit. It's some sort of random dice thing. It was just the cheapest kit I could find that would arrive on time for this video. So I've built a little bit of it up already, and when I've been doing it, I've been switching between the TS80 and my main 60-watt soldering station. And genuinely, the TS80 seems to perform better. Now, admittedly, the tip on this soldering station is pretty old and manky, and it's a conical tip, so it's not as good as the TS80's. But I was genuinely finding that the TS80 was actually flowing a bit better and just being a bit more responsive than the 60-watt soldering station when set to the same temperature. So that's really impressive. So potentially, if I got a better tip for this, it might be better. But the TS80 performed brilliantly for soldering this kit together. So there's some solder joints there I've done already, and what we'll do is I'll put some more components in and just film it live and try and commentate what I'm feeling. It's really hard to get across on camera how a soldering iron feels, of course, but I'll try and, express it a little bit. But yeah, putting this together, the TS80 performs brilliantly. So now let's do a few solder joints with the TS80. So do these ones down here. It's definitely not easy to do it while filming, but as you can see there, it flows on really well. Like, there's absolutely no problem there at all. Now I'm using leaded solder for this, but it will do lead free. I just prefer working with leaded. It does just work so much better. And yeah, you can see it's just flowing on there really nicely. It's just working really well. And I'm not an expert at soldering. I've done it a fair bit, obviously, but I mean, I've got no formal training or professional experience in it. And this iron just makes it really easy. It just works brilliantly with this. So yeah, I'm really happy with this thing. Knock that one up there a little bit, but yeah, it seems to work quite well. So now just crop those leads off. We'll try a couple with the older iron, or not the older, just the big soldering station. So now I've cropped those leads off, we'll try the soldering station as well, just see as a rough comparison. Again, it's going to be really hard to sort of express on camera, but we'll see how it feels instead. And it's just not taking nearly as well, it just feels like it's struggling a bit. I mean, it almost feels like it's colder, which is, it's possible the temperature measurement on the irons isn't exact. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those thermocouples, so I can't actually test it properly. I tested with a thermocouple that attached to my multimeter, and they both came out about the same temperature. However, that thermocouple maxes out at 300 degrees, so I was really pushing it towards its upper limit, so that may not be accurate. But yep, so the big soldering station at 300 degrees worked pretty well, but the TS80 did just seem to perform that a little bit better. So it is possible that the temperatures aren't completely accurate, or it's just because the TS80 is direct heat and the soldering station isn't, and the direct heat just makes it much more responsive, so it's definitely performs really well. We'll also try and do this dip socket at the same time. I've just done one corner just to hold it in place. Now you can see there, the iron just makes really light work of it. And it's also pretty good for doing like subsequent joints, you're not having to like wait for it to heat up again in between doing joints. You can go straight from one to the other, and it just works. So yeah, that performs really well. So what I'll now do is I'll just go away and finish this up. There's a few minor components to put in, and then we'll come back once I'm done. So that's the kit finished, so that's it all there. Finished putting all the LEDs in and put all the resistors in, put the two ICs in. It's a 555 timer and then some sort of binary counter that it's using. It's a fairly simple circuit. And on the bottom there you can see all the solder joints. And overall it went really well, and for the rest of it I ended up using the TS80. I continued to try and switch between the soldering station and the TS80, but to be honest the TS80 was working so much better I used it to finish it off. So yeah, that's it there, and stuck a USB cable on it, just takes 5 volts. Plug it into the power brick for the TS80. There we go. Gives a number, and then you just sort of press that, cycles for a bit, then it settles on a number. I'm guessing the outcome actually depends on how long you've held this button down for, based on how it's doing randomness. But yeah, it works. It was a cheap little kit just to do a quick test. So yep, there you go. So now to try and really put it through its paces, I'm going to try and just put solder onto this big ground plane here on this spare PCB and just see how easily it melts it. And then I'll try it again with a big soldering station and see how it compares. So we've got more leaded solder again here, TS80. And we'll see how it manages this, because this is a huge thermal mass. This will maybe make it struggle a little bit. I mean, it's actually melting on. Okay, yeah, that's melting on there fine. Which helped with the PCB was, held still. I just chuck something on it. There we go. But yeah, that's actually doing a decent job there. It's flowing around fine. So yeah, it sticks a little bit, but it's doing a pretty good job there for 18 watts. That's really pretty good. So yeah, it's definitely keeping that molten really well. So that's absolutely fine. And to give it a sort of comparison, we'll try the soldering station, which bear in mind is 60 watts, so I am expecting it to be a little bit better. Set the same temperature, and we'll see how this works. Struggling a little bit with conical tip here. Really need to get a new tip for this thing, but I mean, this is honestly feels like it's struggling a little bit more. I think it is just the tip on this is just so worn out, to be honest, but yeah, it actually feels honestly like it's struggling a little bit more than the TS80, but this could well just be the tip, because it is an old tip that's conical, so it's not quite as good as a chisel tip. But yeah, that actually worked really well. Like that, the TS80 did that absolutely brilliantly onto like quite a large thermal mass. And then as another test, what I've got is I've got this other board here that I was testing TS80 on ages ago. So it's got loads of solder over this area and it's completely cool. So we'll see how it manages to melt completely cold solder on quite a large area. Let's put it on there, so it's set at 300 degrees. And yep, that's actually melting. I mean, it's not like it's doing it instantly on contact, but it's dragging a little bit, but I mean, it's managing. So that's pretty impressive. So yeah, like it is definitely like dragging a little bit in there, but it's not bad at all. And then the soldering station just completely fails at this. I really think it's a tip on this at this point. This station shouldn't be performing this badly. I think the tip's just completely worn out. It's been abused for quite a while, never really been replaced properly. So yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that not working very well, but the TS80 does a brilliant job with that as well. And as a final test, I'm going to try and solder this really poor attempt at a sort of NASA splice. So this is 1mm copper wire from Twin and Earth, so we'll try and see if we can do this. This is also going to be a massive ask for it because it's a huge bulk of copper. But, see if it does it. I mean, it's not actually doing a bad job. Actually, it's working pretty well. Yeah, so even with this like huge, massive, fairly thick copper wire clamped into a metal stand that's also going to, you know, have a thermal effect on it, it's coping absolutely fine. This is genuinely really impressive. So this is the first time I've actually done this test with it, and I was expecting it to sort of do a reasonable job, but maybe struggle a bit, but I mean, even with that mass of copper there, that was fine. So yeah, I'm really impressed with this. So yeah, there you go, that's actually worked pretty well. So I'm really impressed with this thing's thermal performance. It's way better than I was expecting it to be, especially for an 18-watt iron. And then finally, as for the ground strap, that's it there. And it's got this sort of little fork on the end. So what you need to do to attach this is on the end of the iron there's this little sort of Allen key thing. This little hex nut. You can just loosen that off a little bit with the Allen key that's provided. There you go. Loosen that off a bit. This then slides under that there, and then you can tighten it down again. Like that. And then you can attach the crocodile clip on some sort of ground point. Once you've done that, if we check with the multimeter here, you'll see the tip is now electrically connected to the ground point. So that works. Now, I'm not really an ESD sort of, I don't really work with hugely ESD sensitive components, so I don't really need something like this. So I imagine if you're doing that, you would know when you need this. However, one thing I have noticed is it is quite stiff. In comparison to that USB-C cable, which is really flexible, this is really quite stiff. So I can imagine if you were having to use this, it could get quite annoying, this sort of wire tugging on the iron. But I suppose if you need it, you do have it if it's required. The only other real minor complaint with this is that you do require the Allen key or some sort of hex screwdriver to take this on and put it off. It would be nice to see if there's some other way they can make it so it was easier to attach, because you do have to have the Allen key handy. And I can imagine things like that will go missing, but it is there if you need it. So now before we finish up, let's quickly take it apart. So I'll take the tip out there, that just pulls out, and I'll also unscrew this cowl here. I don't really know if you need to, but we may as well take it off. Oh, like that. And now there's a screw hidden under the button. I've already taken the button off while I was looking for it, so I'm just going to leave it off. But you just literally need to like lever a spudger underneath and this pings off. And that reveals a single sort of hex nut under there. So hopefully we can just take that out with the included Allen key. Oh, there we go. Yep, and that'll come out. Now hopefully I don't break this, but at least I filmed everything else first, so if I do it won't mean I can still release the video, but yep, so yep, that's now out, and the whole front comes off. So that's the nice metal front that comes off. All very nice sort of machine metal there. And there we can see the main PCB. So that's the OLED screen on the right there, the two buttons, and then there's the 3.5mm jack. I don't know, does this board just lift out, or is it sort of stuck in somehow? Not sure. Maybe I need to take the grounding screw out as well. Maybe that's holding the board in. Quite possibly not. And that's out. Let's see, can this lift out? Right, I'll go way off camera and try and figure out how to get this out rather than breaking it trying to show it on video. Right, I think I'm going to admit defeat on this one, because I was able to sort of try and get the board out, but the problem is you'd have to bend the board to get the 3.5mm jack and USB-C connectors out away from the case, and I didn't really want to risk breaking it because I really like this thing and want to use it. But yeah, it's fairly small. There are better teardowns online that actually show the components, but you can see we've got the OLED screen here, we've got the two buttons, and if we just lift the screen up, which is on a slight hinge, under there is the STM32 microcontroller that runs the whole thing. So yep. Bit unfortunate that we can't take it fully apart without me risking breaking it, but yeah, it feels like a very nice device anyway. So as you can see up here, this is version 1.71 of the hardware. So it'd be interesting to see if they've made any tweaks over time and there's actually different versions out there in the wild. But yeah, the one I've reviewed here is version 1.71 of the hardware. So there you go. That was a look at the TS80 soldering iron from Banggood.com. And genuinely, I'm really impressed with this thing. When I got it, I was expecting to be able to use it as just a sort of day-to-day soldering iron for things that I don't want to use a big soldering station for because it's too bulky and inconvenient. But to be honest, having used this, it actually performs better than my soldering station for a lot of things that I've been doing. So to be honest, I can see myself using this as my main soldering iron and only really using the soldering station if I'm doing something that it actually is required for. And to be honest, I can't really think what that would be unless it's something with really high thermal mass that this thing can't cut. So yeah, it works brilliantly. My only real complaint at the moment is the lack of availability of tips, because you can't get replacement tips yet. So once this tip burns out, I won't be able to buy a new one until they become available, which will make me a little bit hesitant to use it for now. But they have listed that they are definitely launching them, so as long as they stay true to their word and do actually launch the tips, this will be a brilliant soldering iron. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and if you're interested in buying the TS80 soldering iron, there's links in the description to buy it from Banggood.com. Thanks for watching.